I'm not happy.
I don't need Elizabeth Warren or the government giving away my money.
Calling Mike Bloomberg an oligarch has implications in this country that I think are unfair and unreasonable.
I care. That's it.
Makes you think of some rich person who got their money off of oil in Russia, who's taking advantage of a broken and dysfunctional system.
Bernie Sanders saying, the country's corrupt, our system's corrupt. Be careful about that language, Bernie. You know, be careful.
Oh, well, I'm sorry.
Now witness the firepower of this fully armed and operational battle station.
Stop with the questions. Celebrate. Swollen.
There's insanity in the control room.
Stop with the questions. Celebrate.
Hey everybody, welcome to the show. Around the nation, right here, Waldorf Nation. Jeff Waldorf here with you today. It's a show. We got a show. We're gonna talk about swollen balls. Okay, so that's how today is going. The news cycle is dumb. There's so much dumb. We're devoting the show to dumb. So here we go. Fun times. You're going to enjoy it. Again, AOC in trouble over a dress. Here we go again. Ridiculousness. I'm going to break it down, of course. We got Morning Joe talking about tax cuts for the rich. Whoa, Morning Joe, what's going on here? Wait. This is going to be an interesting show. We got Tucker Carlson, as I mentioned, talking about swollen balls. I'm not kidding. Okay.
His testicles became swollen.
There it is, right there. And we have got that. And then, of course, we've got a couple of not books, but a couple of excerpts from a book, another book about Trump, with some fun stuff in it. So, just I want to talk about it. Should be fun. We'll do it. Let's jump into it. Before we do, of course, please like, share the stream if you haven't already. Very helpful if you do so. Super chats, always welcome and always appreciated, of course. Not only that, but, we're also on Twitch. So please, if you have Bezos bucks, whatever, send some of that my way by subbing with Prime. Again, it goes to help us. All the wonderful stuff. All right. Hashtag tax the rich. I agree, 100%. Awesome. So, yeah, got to keep that sound. But I'm already ahead of you. I already have it. That's why I was a couple of minutes late, getting the stream up because I was busy getting that. And I was like, oh, it'd be a great idea. I got to get those I got to get the sound bites. But we weren't late today, though, so it worked out. It's pretty good. I'm getting better with time management. I am. All right. Anyway, with that said, let's dive into the most nonsense story of the day that is enraging people for some unknown, ungodly reason. So we're gonna dive into that. Let's talk about the dress. Let's do it. So last night was the annual Met Gala. Apparently it's one of the biggest fashion events of the year. Likely why I don't pay attention to it. It's a bunch of rich people getting together and doing God knows what. I don't know. I'm not a rich person. But this year was a little bit different. Because AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the congresswoman from New York, was in attendance and had a white dress that said simply, tax the rich. In fact, here's some video from an interview she had.
She added this. She said that her cousin in Trinidad, quote...
That's the wrong video, sorry. Well, let's go to the right video.
My God, tax the rich. What a model, AOC. What up? I didn't know you model as well. Damn.
All right, so, hey, oh, look at that. Tax the rich. Wonderful. So let me just add that before we get into the story, I just want to tell you that the discourse around this has been terrible. I mean, everybody's mad. The internet's mad. Apparently lefties are mad. Right-wingers are mad. Everybody's mad. Wow. I don't care. Let's just say that. I don't care about the discourse. I think it's like cancer, okay? But apparently everybody's incredibly obsessed over this. So now I have to go and dive into this and see what the fuss is about. So she's at the Elite Gala, and she's wearing this dress. She looks very nice. And here's what she posted on Instagram for her reasonings. Quote, proud to work with Aurora James as a sustainably focused Black woman immigrant designer who went from starting her dream at Veli's at a flea market in Brooklyn to winning the CFDA against all odds, and then worked together to kick open the doors to Met. She added, the time is now for childcare, healthcare, and climate action for all. Tax the rich. And added, and yes, before anybody starts wilding out, NYC elected officials are regularly invited to and attend the Met due to our responsibilities in overseeing our city's cultural institutions that serve the public. I was one of several in attendance. Dress is borrowed via brother Veli's. And so, look, this is not even her dress, all right? And it was from an up-and-coming, maybe not up-and-coming, but somebody who has a pretty diverse background. So I don't see the issue here. I mean, in that post, she pretty much preemptively destroyed about 90% of all the ridiculous talking points being used against her, okay? I mean, this entire situation is the photo shoot all over again. Hey, guys, understand, if you do a photo shoot, you don't keep the clothes, all right? You don't keep the clothes, and you boost. And what she did was she boosted a designer that is a member of a marginalized community. Also, there's no indication that she paid to get in. You know how much it is to get into the Met Gala? $30,000. $30,000. Jesus. That's a lot of money. No wonder you and I, or regular people, can't get in. That is, of course, unless you're invited, which means either somebody paid a ticket for you or whatever. Like regularly, apparently, designers will buy entire tables and they'll go invite people. And she was invited by Aurora James. So, all right, there you go. So now, the best part, though, obviously, is the fact that she goes to this event, which normally working class people are not invited to. But now she's no longer working class. She's a politician. Well, she goes in there and she decides to troll them with tax the rich. Great. I think it's great. I see no problem here. None at all. She also told Reuters on the carpet that she felt that wearing the dress to the gala was important since most conversations about taxation happen among people who are middle class or working class. Quote, I think it's incredibly important because when we talk about supporting working families, and when we talk about having a fair tax code, oftentimes those conversations are happening among working and middle-class people. I think it's time that we bring all classes into the conversation about having a more fair country. All right, great. So now the timing of this, of course, makes sense. Yesterday, House Democrats released a plan to repeal some of Trump's tax cuts on the rich. Now, they would try to raise the corporate tax rate from 21 to 26.5%. I think it's still too low, in my opinion, but understand that this is not something that AOC can do alone. She cannot raise taxes on the rich to what I would love to. You know what I'd like to see? I'd love to see a marginal tax rate of 90% on any dollar over $1 billion. 90%. That's pretty good, right? We're not even close to that. That said, under Obama, the corporate tax rate in 2014, for example, was 39.1%. Obama then made 99% of Bush tax cuts permanent. And then, of course, Trump dropped the tax the tax rate again to 21%. But, of course, guys, when we talk about tax rates, understand that what we talk about is the stated rate, not the effective rate. Now, the effective rate happens to be much, much lower, which is why people like Jeff Bezos at Amazon can pay pretty much nothing while riding a dick rocket to space. Okay? So that's how that happens, because, of course, the effective rate usually involves like rebates and loopholes and all these different things that every time they cut taxes, Republicans swear like, oh, no, we're going to close the loopholes. And then they never close the loopholes. And so not only is the lower, the rate lower, but it's also like Swiss cheese. And so they end up paying even less and sometimes a negative tax rate, which means they get a refund from the government. So, yeah, let's have that conversation. Let's talk about taxes. Let's talk about taxing the rich. I'm open to that. And guess what? Now, as a result of this, we are having this discussion. And yet, there are people out there that are screaming that it's performative. Yes. Yes, it is performative. That's the whole point. I think that there are people out there, and whether it be, on purpose, like purposely confusing the two, policy and politics, or just not understanding how that works. I mean, again, politics itself is performative. It's nothing but performative. And understand that, like, you need one to get the other. You need the politics to get to the policy. So what you do is you play politics. You go out, you spread your message, you defend your position, you get the people on your side. You get the, and when you get people on your side, you use that to try to put the pressure on the other politicians that are against you in order to vote in favor of the thing that you were in favor of. So, it's actually pretty effective for politicians. And I know we don't hear this a lot, but it actually is true. Yes, money plays a gigantic role in politics. We need to get rid of all the money, get all the corporate money, get all the union money, get all the private money out to a publicly funded system. But what also works is community engagement. If your congressperson starts getting a flood of calls, telling them, asking them to either support or not support something, if enough people call and if enough people hound them, there is a good chance, a very good chance that they're going to listen and they're actually going to do what you want. That's putting pressure on politicians. That's doing it from the outside. That is grassroots pressure, right? And so understand, like, look, that pressure does matter because these politicians, they want to keep their jobs, generally. Something that's really important to a lot of politicians is being able to keep their job, right? And so, yes, money can buy ads and they can blanket the airwaves and do all this stuff, but without votes, they lose. So you can have all the money in the world, all the money is thrown into your election, but if you get no one to vote for you, well then, all that money was basically wasted. And we looked at that. A great example is Michael Bloomberg. That's really it. Michael Bloomberg dropped millions of dollars on his own campaign. Millions and millions. But he was such an out-of-touch, utter asshole that nobody wanted to vote for Michael Bloomberg. Just ask him what happened. And so money, again, doesn't always win elections. Money doesn't always matter. Again, it does because of what it can do. Money buys messaging. Money plays politics in order to get your position. And also order to spread disinformation against the other candidate. We saw that when the DFMI dropped tons and tons, millions of dollars on Nina Turner's race in Ohio. So that money does have an effect, but again, that is the messaging, and that is essentially playing politics. That's what it is. Again, performative. All this is performative. Overall, if enough of your constituents want you to do a specific thing, and you're paying attention and you're holding them accountable, very likely they're going to at least try to do the thing, or they're going to look like they're trying to do the thing. And so that's why, of course, you always have to, yes, hold your politicians accountable to make sure they're at least attempting to do the thing. Now, that message, that pressure, that performative aspect is then supposed to lead to policies being worked on in your behalf, which again, as a result of our system, takes entirely too long to happen. But again, this is how the system was intentionally designed. It was designed to be very slow and deliberative. Overall, you need the politics in order to get the policy. You've got to learn how to play politics. It's almost as if politics itself is dumb, but also really important. Weird how that works out. So now here's the thing, right? So now, again, as I mentioned, holding your politician accountable when they don't do the thing. You also have to understand that politicians, for example, AOC, some of the criticism is AOC wants to tax the rich, but she hasn't done it yet. Why hasn't she done it yet? She says she wants to do this, Joe. She must be lying. It's all performative. Well, okay, well, here's the thing. Let me give you some examples, all right, of criticism towards AOC that I think is unfair. This is Hex, the hierarchy, who said that this dress is, quote, one of the most disgusting things that I've ever seen. While constituents she failed are being evicted or wondering how they're going to eat tonight. AOC out here living large at the Met Gala. Wearing a dress that says tax the rich, but will do nothing to make it a reality. Okay, dude, she's one person. She doesn't have a magic tax the rich button. I wish she did. But that's not the country that we live in. And on the eviction moratorium, what you want her to like overrule the Supreme Court? On the eviction moratorium? Can she get 50 senators and a majority of House members? Well, look, the House is already on that side of trying to expand the eviction moratorium. How can she herself do those things? Again, she doesn't have power just by herself. That's not how it works. You are outnumbered. Yes, you can do all you can to try to pressure people, to pressure your colleagues, and to play politics. But at the end of the day, this is a numbers game. I mean, again, what the fuck? Like, when did she become the supreme ruler of the United States? I don't understand. Like, what the fuck do you think she can actually do? Another one. Partying with celebrities at an elitist event makes us Dems look awful. Wrote DVRNG The Truth. Uncovering the Truth. Especially in the middle of a voting rights crisis and women's rights in Texas hanging by a thread. Do better, AOC. Okay, but how? What do you expect her to do? What can she do? On her own. I mean, if you wanted to tweet more, okay, that's fine. But but if she tweets more, she's just being performative and not actually doing the thing. Oh, but if she's not tweeting enough, well, then she doesn't care about that thing anymore. You can't win, honestly. You can't win. Oh, she's not tweeting enough about Medicare for all. And again, that's the issue. And again, if you say that, oh, you're tweeting too much and you're not actually working for the people, again, you can't win. Okay, you can't win. So that's the issue here. So I understand, like, holding your politician accountable, but you also have to understand the limits of people's power in Congress. And look, you can look at this and be like, well, why can't she be Joe Manchin, right? Joe Manchin is like literally holding up the Senate and holding up Biden's infrastructure bill. Hey, that's a fair point. Well, first of all, she's in the House, okay? And the House caucus has already agreed to pass a $3.5 trillion infrastructure bill. The party is on board. What's going on here is that Joe Manchin is holding up Biden's agenda that overwhelmingly most Democrats already agree with. And yes, there are some situations where she could exercise some of her own power. The squad could. And if you want to criticize her for for that, for not using any sort of leverage that she has. That's fair. That is fair. And again, you just have to look at it situationally and understand what they can and cannot do, and also the politics of the situation. But once again, politics is stupid, but it is important. It is important. So, again, understand that on most issues, AOC is to the left of the Democratic Party. She probably tried to argue to raise the taxes, likely, but was outvoted. Of course, she's outnumbered, or whatever. And understand that progressives in Congress are outnumbered, and numbers do matter. It's not just AOC. I should say it's not AOC or the squad keeping us from better things. It is the rest of the party. It's the Mansions, the Cinemas, the Testers, the Warners, Pelosi's on some issues. Okay? And in reality, those people understand that those people that I just named off are not really the issue. It looks like the Democratic Party is negotiating with itself, but they're not. They're actually negotiating with the Chamber of Commerce. They're negotiating with the donors that own these politicians. Again, you could look at Joe Manchin. Joe Manchin's an empty suit. You look behind him, you might see a giant hand sticking up his ass, because he's a puppet of the donors. And again, I know it pisses people off, but again, performative gestures, I should say, there is a place for performative gestures in politics, because that's what politics is. And it's effective at getting attention to these issues that are important. People are now talking about this. The whole news cycle's on fire over this. And now we're having a conversation. Unfortunately, there are people that take this conversation in ridiculous directions when it should be about, hey, you're right. There's a majority of Americans that want to tax the rich. Okay, now let's have a conversation of what we can put in the bill. Oh, look at that. The Democrats have a bill. Let's see if we can make it stronger. That's the thing. And so, yes, she's right that, we can talk about this all day when we have no power. But she just brought the conversation right to their front door. They can't ignore it. Oh, they'll try, but they can't ignore it. In fact, I have a picture of you. Maybe I'm reading too much into this one, but this is an image from the gala. You see that woman's face in the background? She don't look happy. I think somebody might be upset that someone's coming after their wealth. Weird. Again, maybe I'm just reading too much into that one. But again, what effect this conversation is going to have, I can't really say. But that's where we come in, the people, okay? Now, what we can do is we can pressure Democratic politicians who are not in support of taxing the rich. And they're out there. Because again, if they care about their jobs, and if you're in their district especially, they're going to have to respond. And now, if you're out of district, they don't give a damn. But if you're in their district, and you're a voter, well then yes, they absolutely are going to care. If enough of you not harass them, sorry. That's a bad word. Bad word. Don't harass them, okay? But if you call them nicely and explain that you are in favor of this certain thing, you're in favor of the infrastructure bill as it is, or, with climate provisions and things like, a higher tax rate on the rich, even adding things like a minimum wage increase into it, human infrastructure, things like that, then you might get somewhere, or at least a little bit further than you would if you were just to complain on Twitter. These politicians have to know that they can be replaced. And that if enough voters are pissed off, then yes, you can find someone to replace them. It's like Crowley was replaced, and just like other corporate Democrats have been replaced as well. They've got to know that situation, and so that's where we come in with our pressure from the outside. All right. moving on. Let's go to taxes, by the way. Now that we're having this conversation on taxes. It's a weird one. Morning Joe is not happy about the Democrats' new tax plan. So now the reason might surprise you. New York Times recently put out a report that outlined the plan to raise $2.2 trillion from wealthy individuals. Now that proposal includes increases on taxes on income over $450,000 or $400,000 for unmarried individuals. Raise that to about 39, almost 40%. The top capital gains rate would rise to about 25%, so it would go up from about 5%, 25 from 20. Add a 3% surtax to incomes over $5 million. Also changes the amount of money that you can shield. The state taxes, it would go down back to $12 million. Currently, it's at $24 million as a result of Trump's tax cuts. It would also raise money from pass-through entities. Those changes, including the extension of an existing 3.8% surtax to include pass-through income, would raise taxes primarily on high earners and generate several $100 billion in revenues, according to Democratic estimates. And all in total, the Joint Committee estimated on Monday that the changes would raise about $1 trillion from high-income individuals, the rest coming from other things. So now, there's some gaps. Obviously, there's a problem with raising only $1 trillion of that 2.1 from wealthy Americans. It should all be coming from wealthy Americans. And so now, for example, one of the things missing is a wealth tax. Wealth tax, incredibly popular, right? Not in there. They're not closing the carried interest loophole, which costs the government $63 billion a year in lost revenue. There's no real aggressive inheritance taxes, thanks to, of course, Democrat, Richard Neal, head of the Ways and Means Committee, who shot it down. So it leaves out a lot of potential revenue from the super rich. So you got your Jeff Bezos and your Elon Musks and your Bill Gates, incredibly rich individuals that are barely going to be touched by this. So those are problems. Now, Morning Joe had a very interesting take on this, and he's mad. Take a look.
I don't understand what's going on when you have the people writing the tax bill for the Democrats saying they're concerned about moderates' concerns. What, do they want Jeff Bezos and Amazon to keep paying $0 in tax? Is that a moderate concern, or is that actually a lobbyist's concern? Because over the past few years, there are corporations that have paid zero taxes in a year. And just over the past couple of years, that includes Amazon, Chevron, Avis, Delta, Eli Lilly, GM, Goodyear, Halliburton, Honeywell, IBM, Netflix, Occidental Petroleum, Owens Corning, Salesforce, U.S. Steel. Last year, Archer Daniels, FedEx, Nike, on and on and on. Are moderates really concerned that those corporations may actually have to pay millions of dollars in tax? Because right now they're paying zero. And billionaires are continuing to figure out how to pay little or nothing. Hedge fund titans are paying taxes at lower rates than their clerical employees and the people who chauffeur their Bentleys. You think that's demagoguery? You think that's popular? No, it's not. No, that's the fact.
Wow. Honestly, I did not expect that from Joe Scarborough. It makes me think, okay, what's the angle? What's the angle here? Again, look, he's criticizing the Democrats' tax plan, but in general, this is a right kind of criticism. You're right, it doesn't go far enough. You're right, it doesn't touch billionaires enough. Absolutely, 100%. Let me add that the people who claim to be moderates here are not moderates at all. They're corporatists. So they work for their corporate donors, in order to try to stop taxes. Again, taxing the uber wealthy and corporations is actually extremely popular with the voters. I mean, you look at the polling, Pew Research summarized its own findings by saying far more Americans continue to say that they're bothered a lot by the feeling that some corporations and wealthy people do not pay their fair share in taxes than by the complexity of the tax system or even the amount that they pay in taxes. Now, Republicans, they come out and they say, well, no, the problem here is we got a very complex tax system and we need to reduce it to where we can write our taxes on a postcard. Yes, that's it. That'll fix the system. Yes. And most of the American people are saying, no, that's not the problem. The problem is rich people aren't paying enough. We're paying more than rich people, and that's fucked up. Like, we don't like that. In fact, the New York Times also concluded, a wide range of polls now show broad public support for tax increases on high earners. The New York Magazine headline stated, Biden's tax hike on the wealthy is incredibly popular. Axios reported the top pollster for Joe Biden's presidential campaign advises the White House to do something that often makes Democrats nervous, talk loudly and proudly about raising taxes on the rich. So I may have found the angle. We'll get to that. So now the reason, of course, that we should raise taxes on the rich is to reduce income inequality. Look, when you have a society where a small number of people control a vast amount of wealth, well, that's not good for a country. It's not good for an economy. It's not good for the people. In fact, everybody else gets poorer while the rich get richer. That's what's been happening in this country for a very, very long time. And that is a trend that we need to reverse. Now, if the vast majority of the working people, when they have a major share of the wealth, turns out that everybody tends to do better. And yes, even though the top 1% isn't quite as rich as it was, they still end up being fairly rich. Weird how that works, right? But yet, Scarborough. So now Scarborough, he's going to move on to talking about wealth redistribution, which I think is another interesting perspective.
Listen to me here, because everybody hates income redistribution. That makes you a socialist, doesn't it? If you're for a scheme that redistributes wealth, well, let me tell you something. In the world we've lived in over the past 40 years, there's been the largest income redistribution scam in American history. And it's been the middle class that's been looted while trillions keep flowing into the bank accounts of billionaires. This whole income redistribution thing we keep, oh, you can't raise taxes on people because that will be income redistribution. You're a socialist. Well, guess what? The very people who are saying that, the very people who are funding think tanks that'll say that, the very people that are paying lobbyists to get the message out to say that, the very people who are spending millions and millions of dollars on lawyers and lobbyists on K Street who are saying that, they're the people who have scammed you. They're the people whose monopolies continue to be untouched. They continue to be untouched all because they can buy the best lobbyists, they can buy the best lawyers, they can buy the best influencers on Capitol Hill, across Washington, D.C., and across Wall Street. Please, please, Democrats, do better than that.
Oh, never thought I'd say that, but based? Oh, it feels weird, man. That look, I'm still trying to find. I think I got the angle that he's playing, but yes, great. Tax the rich, absolutely. I can't disagree with the things that he's saying there. But here, okay, I got it. He's criticizing Democrats. I agree with the criticism as I mentioned, but we're the Republicans on this. Again, both sides understand, both sides serve the corporations and the super rich. But one side does it way more openly and way more brazenly than the other. Now, understand the Republican Party just tells poor people to pound sand, like, go die. Like, there's a ditch, have at it. All right, well, understand that, like, one Okay. As I said before, yes, Republicans tell people to pound sand, poor people. Democrats will do so flying a Black Lives Matter flag. So understand that that's kind of where they are economically. Now, if you're talking about social issues, Democrats are way, way better than Republicans. And of course, on some economic issues, for example, childcare, etc., the Democrats are actually trying to do something fantastic. And so I agree with them, right? But generally, again, nobody's really economically super progressive in this country, except for progressives in Congress. But anyway, as I said, if you're going to critique rich people paying super low taxes, then you might want to look at where this started, Ronald Reagan. And every president since, Democrats and Republicans have lowered taxes for the rich, corporate taxes. And so that's not a coincidence, by the way. This is by design. You had two Supreme Court cases. It doesn't get brought up enough. You have Buckley Valeo and Bellotti versus First Bank. Now, respectively, one of them said money is speech. The other said corporations are people, which means that corporations, who are now people, can now speak to our politicians by giving them tons and tons of money. And so following those two decisions, here comes, a flood of money in politics. You have got soft money, dark money. Then you've got Citizens United. Then you've got McCutcheon versus FEC. And we are awash in money from the wealthy and corporations. And it comes with one single directive: keep our taxes low, or else we cut you off. And this is not a strictly partisan problem, as I said. This is more of a systemic problem. Like I said, both parties, by and large, take money from corporations. Look, the Democrats are probably the biggest recipient of pharmaceutical money. Although a lot of corporations, companies, industries will play both sides as well. You've got, one of the most corrupt corporate Democrats, Henry Cuellar, in the House that takes a massive amount of fossil fuel money. And so the money is everywhere. The money is everywhere. And that's the big problem here, okay? And so, look, if you want to call out Democrats, that's totally fine. We do so all the time on the show. But don't leave out the real reasons behind the corruption, and that's the corporate donors. And that's, unfortunately, what Joe and MSNBC don't really talk about. They don't talk about the systemic money in politics problem, okay? Yes, you want to talk about the lobbyists, 100% great. That is an effect of the money, but you also got to talk about the systemic problem of money being involved at all in our politics. And again, MSNBC, CNN, no real outlet on the mainstream media ever wants to talk about this. There were two hosts that I know of that did have a platform on MSNBC to talk about it. Cenk Uygur and Dylan Ratigan. Guess who no longer works at MSNBC? But hey, keep working that, Joe. I 100% agree with that criticism. Keep it up. Keep it up. And, maybe look into it a little bit further, and you can find what's really behind the reason that Democrats will likely not raise taxes on the rich, at least not in a significant way. Was Ed Schultz too? I don't know. Ed Schultz was in favor of union money, I believe. He might have afterwards, though, talked about it. I just don't remember. All right. Move on. We're going to talk about balls. Great time to come in, by the way, to the stream. We're talking about testicles. Wonderful. Oh, okay. Hey.
Stop with the questions. Celebrate.
As if we needed any more confirmation that we live in the world's dumbest timeline, Fox host Dr. Carlson recently talked about swollen balls. It all started when rapper Nicki Minaj shared some hesitancy about the COVID-19 vaccine. She first expressed that hesitancy to get shot in a series of tweets, beginning when she revealed that she had contracted coronavirus before the VMAs. So I don't really care too much about the celebrity stuff, but she responded to people who were like, hey, you should probably get your vaccine. And she says, well, I didn't. And yes, I wasn't doing these public appearances because, not because of COVID-19, no, it's because of my baby. I had a new baby and I'm not vaccinated. And then, you know, to people, of course, who were telling her to get vaccinated, she responded with things like, Drake told me he got COVID with the vaccine. Yeah, okay. And you can have a breakthrough infection. That does happen. I'll explain the science behind that later. But she also replied to other people, sending her research on the vaccine, saying that she had experienced the same symptoms as people with the damn vaccine, and the idea that the vaccination prevents more serious symptoms of COVID-19 is quote unquote not true in her opinion. But it is true. Yes, the vaccine does prevent more serious symptoms. And what it does is that it teaches your body how to fight COVID-19 more effectively. That's what the COVID-19 vaccine does. You create antibodies that will home in, that are shown how to attack the spike protein and destroy the virus before it can replicate and make you seriously ill. That's really it. That's very, 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 very simple science behind it. That's what it does. It's prevention. Vaccines are about prevention mostly, but also if you do happen to be sick, then your body knows how to fight it better. That's really it. That's really it. And look, no one has ever claimed that it was 100% effective at prevention. No, actually, you still have about a 1 in 5,000 chance of having a breakthrough infection with COVID. And if you do, it's very, very likely to be mild. That percent is even lower for people who take precautions or live in a highly vaccinated community. It's almost as if, I don't know, vaccines work. Weird. To give a real-world example, we can look at the states with higher vaccination rates versus lower vaccination rates, and it turns out the infection rates in the least vaccinated areas are about 4 times as high as in the most vaccinated states. I mean, I'm pretty sure, like, that's good enough evidence for me. So now let's get to the balls. What everybody's waiting to hear. The real nutty part of the story. So Tucker Carlson weighed in, and he decided that he's going to go and read this tweet on a show, and well, I'll take a look.
He added this. She said that her cousin in Trinidad, quote, won't get the vaccine because his friend got it and became impotent. His testicles became swollen. His friend was weeks away from getting married. Now that girl called off the wedding. So just pray on it and make sure you're comfortable with your decision, not bullied. Which seems sensible. Big reaction to this. We'll report on that tomorrow.
He read that on air. What is going on here? So okay, let's just kind of break this down, because it's like there's ridiculousness from all sides here, okay? So your cousin's friend's fiance left because his balls got huge and left him impotent, and that's why your cousin's not vaccinated, because of the cousin's friend, and this is your basis. This is your scientific basis for, you know, saying, oh, you should be careful with the vaccine. What? What is going on? Look, I hate to break it to you, or your cousin's friend in another country, your cousin or your cousin's friend, but that's not a side effect of the vaccine. Okay, swollen balls is not a side effect. Impotence is not a known side effect of the vaccine. Nonetheless, I love how Tucker Carlson says, Seems sensible. No, it's not. Not. Okay, so since we're talking impotence here, let me tell you one of the possible side effects of getting COVID-19. Now, according to a couple of investigations, one of them is by physicians and researchers at the University of Miami. COVID-19 may cause some dysfunction and infertility in men. Oops. Oh. So now, apparently decreased sperm count was recorded in some of the men that were studied. And so that's a result of the virus getting into that area, of course, of the body and just kind of hanging around there. And erectile dysfunction, because of the infection had caused reduced blood supply to, well, you know. Yeah. So, look, to be fair, this was a very small sample size for that study. It's not the only one, but of course, more research is needed. Another study was, of course, done in Italy and found that for men with a history of COVID-19, the estimated risk of developing erectile dysfunction was approximately 6 times higher. And those numbers remained even after other factors were considered and ruled out. So that study was led by Emanuele A. Giannini, MD, professor of endocrinology and medical sexology, and was published in the March 20th edition of Andrology. Other preliminary studies have shown similar results. So, protect your balls, get a vaccine, wear your mask, and other than that,
Stop with the questions. Celebrate.
one more story. One more for y'all, and then I have a meeting after work, so I got to get going. Hey there. Dive into it. There's a new book out, which shows how members of the Trump administration were so shaken by what happened on January 6th that they decided to take unprecedented action in order to prevent the former president from possibly blowing up the United States. I'm not kidding. This is this is some stuff. So now, according to a new book by journalist Bob Woodward and veteran Washington Post reporter Robert Costa, and in excerpts, they wrote about how Joint Chiefs Chairman General Mark Milley went around behind everybody's back and ensured that Trump was not going to be able to launch a nuclear strike or carry out a military attack following January 6th. Milley had told the senior staff, quote, "You never know what the president's trigger point is." Well, to be fair, President Trump, former President Trump, is easily triggered. Big surprise. And especially triggered after losing the election. But consider this, okay? So the people around him had such little faith or trust that Trump would honor the election and actually ensure a peaceful transfer of power, that this guy decided to take contingencies because they believed that he was dangerous. Woodward and Costa wrote that Milley feared that Trump would, quote, go rogue, and was certain that Trump had gone into serious mental decline in the aftermath of the election. In response, Milley took extraordinary action, called a secret meeting in his Pentagon office on January 8th to review the process for military action, including launching nuclear weapons. The fact that they're even discussing this is like, that's scary. That's super scary. CNN also reported this Tuesday afternoon, speaking to senior military officials in charge of the National Military Command Center, the Pentagon's war room. Milley instructed them to not take orders from anyone unless he was involved. Milley reportedly told the officers, no matter what you're told, you do the procedure, you do the process. I am part of that procedure, before going around the room, looking each of them in the eye and asking if they understood. Wow. That's serious. That's some serious stuff. We've never heard anything about this about any other president. Ronald Reagan literally had Alzheimer's. Like, that's about as cognitively, impaired as you can get. And we didn't have to worry about him doing a nuclear strike. So understand that puts Trump in a different level. Okay? His brain, the big brain, tremendous brain. No, he's a sociopath. He doesn't care about other people, okay? He says that he could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and not lose any followers, and then went on to lead an insurrection. And it's true. It's true. Again, this is why people are disturbed. This is why people are worried. I mean, this guy is like, my button is is so big. It's bigger than yours. I have the biggest button. When he was talking with North Korea. I mean, you're kidding me. Why don't we just nuke the hurricane? Let's nuke the hurricane. Why can't we do that? What do you want, radioactive Sharknado? He's not a mentally sound person. The guy calls himself a very stable genius, and by the way, he did tweet this. My two greatest assets have been mental stability and like being really smart. Who says things like that? Nobody says that. If you have to brag about your mental stability, chances are you are not stable. And you never were. If I walked up to somebody and I said, you know what? My greatest asset is being really mentally stable. They would back away slowly. You know why? Because it's insane. It's insane. And think about it this way. You say something like, I'm very well known for not murdering people and storing them in my basement. Well, then what are you going to think? People are going to think this guy kills people and stores them in his basement. So yes, I do believe people were legitimately concerned that Trump would not only get us into a war, thankfully he did not, likely because, of course, you had people that were watching him, and also because he's not very smart. Again, mental decline. You say something to him, he forgets 5 minutes later. You wanted him to do something, be the last person in the room. But make sure you make it seem like it's his idea. This is how you deal with somebody whose brain is broken, not functional. The guy's lost touch with reality. Does that make him dangerous? Absolutely could be. Thankfully, though, he's more incompetent than anything else. That doesn't mean he's not dangerous, but it's balanced out by his incompetence. One more thing, which kind of speaks to Trump's motivations here. So now, in another part of the book, Woodward and Costa do talk about a tense encounter between Trump and Pence on January 5th, where, of course, Trump had been continuing his pressure campaign to try to get Mike Pence to not certify the election. Which, again, that doesn't actually mean anything. It's a ceremonial role. It doesn't actually mean that Biden didn't win the election. It's just, it's process. That's it. So, Mike Pence he could say, no, I'm not going to do it. And the election would still be certified. But anyway, here's the conversation, as alleged. Well, if these people say you had the power, wouldn't you want to? I wouldn't want any one person to have that authority, the vice president replied. But wouldn't it be almost cool to have that power? No, Pence insisted. I've done everything I could, and then some to find a way around this. It's simply not possible. So now look, right there, I don't like Mike Pence. I'm not a fan of Mike. Okay? But if this is true, pretty damning. And the other thing I hate is that it makes Mike Pence actually kind of look like that he cares about democracy. Weird. I also hate that. Apparently, he draws the line at treason, even though he was very, very loyal to Trump. But hey, the bar is low. So it is a low bar, and he surpassed that bar. Wow. So his response from Trump was, let me just read it. No, 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 Trump reportedly shouted. You don't understand, Mike. You could do this. I don't want to be your friend anymore if you don't do this. Oh my God, he's a 5-year-old. I mean, I've said it before, he's a child, but almost like in a joking way. Because like he throws fits like a kid, but no, literally that's what a child would say. I don't want to be your friend anymore, Mike. You'll treason for me, or I won't like you anymore. Oh my God. Sad baby. It's so, oh my God. And this continued, by the way, the next morning when Trump tried to convince Pence again. He said, if you don't do it, I picked the wrong man 4 years ago. You're going to wimp out. So now, again, you're talking about this guy who's an overgrown man baby throwing a temper tantrum. And that's what you expect with Trump. But here's where it gets dangerous. Okay? Where it just goes from, incompetence to a real danger for the country. Because during his rally on January 6th, here's what he said about Mike. He said, Mike Pence, I hope you're going to stand up for the good of our Constitution and for the good of our country. And if you're not, I'm going to be very disappointed in you. All right. So that right there was to his followers. That was in public in front of the crowd. On January 6th, that was that same crowd that went into the Capitol building and started, what do you know, going after politicians that disagreed with the election, that disagreed with Trump, Democrats, and, of course, Mike Pence. So now, also, we've learned that, of course, there's evidence of when Trump learned that Mike Pence was in danger, thanks to, I guess, messages from Tommy Tuberville. He tweeted this. He said, Mike Pence didn't have the courage to do what should have been done to protect our country and our Constitution. USA demands the truth. This was after they had broken through the barricades. So, and that led, of course, to a chance of hang Mike Pence, which I guarantee something bad would have happened had they gotten their hands on Mike Pence. That mob was minutes away from him at times. And so understand that this is an example of stochastic terrorism. This is what makes Trump dangerous. His hold over other people. Himself, he's a blithering buffoon. But the things that he says, people actually, they actually listen to him, and they actually think, oh no, this guy's a genius, he's nailed it. Absolutely, I should absolutely do that. This is less about him pushing the nuclear button and more about, I mean, what was his nuclear button? His biggest weapon was firing off a tweet to his fans. Now, thankfully, he can no longer do that. And that's why, of course, deplatforming in some cases works. Because if you are inciting people to violence, that is not free speech. That is incitement. And so understand, though, that his hold over other people and what he can get people to do has always been the true danger of Donald Trump. Those people that he's inspired to do acts of violence on his behalf or acts of insurrection and other things. And so that's the true danger. And look, we have to continue to watch out for that. If someone like Trump can inspire people, imagine what somebody more competent could do. All right. That's it. That's all I got for you today. Thank you for going around the nation beat today. Please like, share the stream if you haven't already. I got to get going here real quick. But thank you all. I appreciate you. I love you all. We're going to raid into someone else. Let's do a Surfy raid today. We haven't done that in a while. So check them out. Surfs over here on Twitch for everybody else. Thank you all. Love you. And remember, change begins with you. Good night, nation. See y'all later.
Stop with the questions. Celebrate. His testicles became swollen.
I have not loved this congregation.
Please clap.
They're kicking me out the door. They're kicking me out the door.